Social Justice Goblin here. Welcome to the house. So, continuing in my series of favorite Magic cards, and just in time for Ultimate Masters, because this card's getting a reprint in Ultimate Masters, I want to talk about one of my most favorite Magic cards that I have loved and endeared for a long time. So, there it is, the Wild Mongrel. Yes, it came out in Odyssey block. And back in, I think, 2000, 1999, and it has been a staple of the Madness decks. Now, Madness decks have lost a lot of power, but before I continue on going on about this card, you got to remember it is now in Ultimate Masters. So, there's this Ultimate Masters version with that nice new modern border, but let's go back to my favorite, the Odyssey version. So, Wild Mongrel, let's shove this up into the corner now. Wild Mongrel, as you can see, is one of my favorite cards, obviously. What made me love this card was its weirdness. It seems on the surface to be a terrible card. I mean, it's a bear for the most part with one green and one colorless, 2/2. However, it has this unique ability. Discard a card and get a +1/+1. And change its color. Now, changing its color, that ability sometimes I use, sometimes you don't. It's not the most used ability. It gets around a lot of those protection spells and a lot of those color-specific spells. Like I'm going to throw out an anti-green spell, bam, I throw a card out, this. But what makes that +1/+1 with discard is, if you play a deck full of stuff that with Madness and Threshold and Flashback, Wild Mongrel's freaking amazing. Because now you're throwing out a Madness card, and you're not losing card disadvantage because that card's going to pump. It's great for that end of the game when you need to get that last bit of damage and you just drop your hand, and then bam, you win. Or you drop that, you need that one extra card to get the threshold, drop that card, you got 7 now, bam, your threshold creatures come back. Or Flashback. It's great with Flashback because, yeah, you're losing a chance to cast it, but usually a Flashback card is expensive, but you still have the card in your graveyard and you can still play it. Plus, you got that +1 extra point of damage in, and like I said, the Mongrel, he's just a beast when you start dropping your hand. Because like I said, you can drop your entire hand and just win with him because you'll get, let's say you have 7 cards, you now have an 8/8 floating on the board. Or let's say like you have an extra card in your hand because you got mana hose, but you got a Mongrel out there. Instead of having to discard, you discard the Mongrel, take 3. Just saying, the Mongrel's great. He's an awesome, awesome card. Now for me, what makes this card so great was, so when I got back into Magic, I got back into Odyssey block. And so the first deck I gravitated towards were a couple others, a couple here, a couple there, but I started falling in love with the Basking Root Wallet too. But then I found the Wild Mongrel. And I created a blue-green Madness deck. And this deck just was fun to play. It had enough control with things like Circular Logic. It had great draw with things like Deep Analysis and great discard with things like Murphy Looter was out at that point, but you had a lot of searching, frantic search, things like that you could search up your deck. Careful Study. And it just comboed well because you could grab a big hand, punch in with your Mongrel, and do 10 points of damage by just drawing cards and then throw out. And the best card that comboed with it, I always won, was with Arrogant Worm. So I played Blue-Green Madness both in Type 2, which was standard, which is now you call standard, Block, because Block was still around back then. We don't have Block anymore, but Block was basically anything in the Odyssey set. And I sometimes play with Wonder too, because then all of a sudden a flying Mongrel, bam, it gets around out. And then me and my friend Mark Perez, who I refer to a lot in these videos, we created a Threshold Mongrel deck in Vintage that was unstoppably cruel. Now it was more of a Threshold deck because it had the Nimble Mongoose to protect against the Abyss. It had a Werebear because a Werebear, it's another video I need to make, is frigging underrated at this point. It's a 4/4 with Threshold, but it's a mana frigging bear, so you get acceleration, and then you just get a beat stick. all for the wonderful price of 2 mana. But the Mongrel just was the combo win because, like I said, Ancestor Recall, all the draw that you have in Vintage, you just draw up your hand, then you throw a Wonder into the graveyard so that you get around the moat, and all of a sudden you're smacking town with the Mongrel, and then out comes the 3/3 Mongoose flying at you, and you can just kill opponents on their first turn. It got around things like Morphling, because Morphling now is like, you could 1-for-1 do on the Morphling, and enforce them when they put damage on the stack. Then you could discard. There were so many great tricks you could play with it, and I played that deck to death. My best result with my Blue-Green Madness deck was I went to a PTQ, because back then, you got to understand, back then we didn't have PPTQs, we had PTQs, and these were large tournaments. And we drove up to New Jersey where there was 500 entrants. And I piloted that deck to a 5-0, 6-0. I got up to 6-0, and then I was so tired, I lost my 7th match and ended up in 41st place, just outside the money and the qualification for the Pro Tour. And I made a mistake with my Arrogant Worm. I should have been so aggressive with my Arrogant Worm, but I was so tired I didn't know what to think. And if I had won that, oh my God, if I had won that match, I would have top 8'd at a 500-man tournament. And yes, it was 500 men. Women playing Magic back then were rarities. Just saying, for all you that want to get offended. That's a whole different video. But like I said, this card was awesome. It was destructive. It was just a beat stick. You could charge in and just wreck people. And it was just, for 1 colorless and 1 green, it was a great beat stick. So I love my Wild Mongrel, and with it being in Ultimate Masters, I hope you get a chance to play with it in some of your drafts. I'm looking forward to it if I decide to draft. I haven't decided yet. And let's say goodbye to my friend, the Wild Mongrel. All right. Thank you for watching. This is Social Justice Guy.